to think about the information more than how you're using that information. I'm just going to carry on talking, and I'll let the admins do the muting, right? Just so we're not distracted. So I've got broken this conversation into really three areas, right? Why business analysis, and we'll go through some of those details. And then out of my experience, again, I haven't gone researching this and looking at the literature, but just knowing about the kinds of data projects that are out there. The intention really for this and how this could also help, it's where people are actually looking to apply for jobs. Sometimes you see certain skill sets in there and you shy away because you think you're not qualified to, right? Hopefully this session will kind of open up your mind to say, maybe I can actually contribute to this kind of projects, right? Data projects is not only about building the codes or building machine learning models. There's a lot of activities, a lot of preparation of the data landscape that you need before you even get to that stage. So we'll talk through about those and some of those opportunities. And then we'll get to look at some of what I consider some of the relevant additional skill sets that you need to kind of succeed. And then there will be Q&A in the end. All right, so before I dive in, and before I dive in, any questions? I'll move on because I don't want to take too much interactions at this stage in time. So here at this point, Rachel, this is where we wanted to try and understand the audience a little bit, but we don't have the chat window, right? So maybe we do this after the session today. If people are just kind to just state where they fall, are they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It'd be good to kind of understand your background and what you're looking to do, right? And why this session interested you in the first place. I have put up there because I think it's also relevant just to give a little bit more background on myself. I have kind of worked in a lot of different domains in finance, manufacturing, the NHS, probably my most fulfilling job until to date. A bit of geospatial data, insurance, and then banking, where I've spent probably the last 12 years or so working. My journey has been kind of very similar to a lot of people. Started as kind of support analyst. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm hoping that it would encourage a few people. Right? As a support analyst, I don't know if they still do those technical call centers these days, but that's where it all started. And then I became an Oracle developer and like to do a little bit more of analysis, and then became a business analyst. And as a side effect of that, I was a lot more placed into data projects. And my interest in that made me train as an information architect. And that's where I spend most of my time these days. So I think it's going to be, so I kind of understand more around the business analysis and the mindset and the data analysis area and the skill sets around that. It's true that when you do your business analysis training, again, this is a lot of background, will probably resonate with some of you or maybe not all of you, but you'll be doing really this key skill set, beefing them up, the requirement analysis. I've put some on there, documenting your user stories as you do your backlogs. Some may even go into doing some sort of agile data modeling, as you need those probably for building your databases. The traditional things like the business case, change management, all sorts, business process analysis. This is a really, really important skill set, and this is not an exhaustive list. This is come, by the way, from the British Computer Society Business Analysis book by Deborah Paul, kind of a standard one that a lot of people use these days. And I'm not saying that these are not relevant. This is really key. It's really important across the board, not only for business analysts. I think project managers, even developers and architects, myself, you can leverage all of the skills at any point in time. Right? It's well recognized. What I have experienced in my journey so far is that as companies embark on projects, on programs, as they build systems and get business analysts and architects involved in those, the aspect of data almost becomes an afterthought. So it's only maybe sometimes when you get to implementation, and then you start thinking about, oh, let's start modeling our data such that we can build the tables or the structures that will hold the data. You don't tend to even see them around user stories around data quite a lot. It tends to be more about, from a user's perspective, what the user is looking to do. And often that is a problem. It's even a problem also now because of the explosion of data. The landscape is changing, and companies are starting to recognize the value that data can bring to their business, to their competitive advantage, and to be able to sustain themselves. Right. Also, with that explosion of data, you get regulations that come. Some of you may be quite aware of the GDPR, the privacy of our personal information. Those are some of the regulations that have come as a result of this explosion of data. And it's actually driving companies to be actually better at understanding their data and be really better at data management. Now, data management is not for data management professionals. It's not for some gurus, right? It's for everybody in the company. And BAs are really well placed to take advantage of that. We also know that AI is the next big thing changing the world, right? In fact, quite recently, a really top CEO of a bank did compare the effect of AI to be even more than the internet. That's how far it is going. And for companies to be able to harness the full potential of AI, they really need to get their data landscape together. They need to get their data management practices together. They need to be able to understand, describe their data, understand what they have, understand what structure it has, understand how to be able to interrogate that information. We will look at some example BA projects, but suffice to say, in preparing this landscape of data, BAs, in my experience, and in companies that I have worked in, right, they play a leading role in doing that. A lot of them tend to need training. And I feel it's an opportunity even for BAs that have not been involved in data projects. As those projects start to multiply and come more and more and more, that BAs need to be ready to take advantage as they hit the job market. Okay. I'm going to pause here a little bit because I want to go in and start talking a little bit more on some of the projects and some of the skill set that may be required. Has anybody got any questions, comments, feedback so far?
You can unmute. Just put your hand up and we can call you. I saw a couple of, just Desmond.
Yeah, I got a question, but I don't. I hope my question would not draw you back. I think it's based on your first or second slide. You said you were a developer before. I want to know how being a developer enhance, because you're a developer before you became a BA. How, thank you. How being a developer helped you, made it easier for you to become a BA.
Okay, I think sometimes these things are just kind of natural fits, right? It did help because at the time I was an analyst developer at the time, but it was in my particular role, it was kind of dual. So I was writing the specifications and then developing, right? At the time, that was even before some of the stringent methodologies were implemented. So there were no agile at the time, for example. But what I would say, what that has helped me as a BA is that I can then work with developers and understand what they need, right? That really made me very efficient as a business analyst.
Yeah, and then, oh, sorry, my bad for you.
Yeah, then the one thing I'll add on that is it is also depends on where you want your career to head to, right? Some people want to really techie, they want to stay developing and stuff. I was always the person that wants to look at the business problem that I'm solving, and sometimes just coding from some specification didn't give me that. As a BA, right, I'm kind of more exposed to the business case, to the requirements, and how I was contributing to the company at large.
All right. So yeah, this is just a follow-up question as well.
Go ahead.
So being a developer, you've got experience as a BA as well. Weighing the two, I'm just ignoring the other ones of analyst system, and I just want to concentrate on the because business analysts, they liaise between the business and the developer. So you've been on the other side, the extreme one side of the loop. Now you've come to the middle as well. So between the two, developer and business analyst, which one has actually enthuse you? Which one do you find more exciting? Which one do you think like, oh, I want to stay here for a longer period?
I would say more a business analyst. But I've always stayed close to the development community because I think that's really important, especially when you're involved in some technical projects. And it's also important when you talk to your stakeholders. Listen, developers are the real people. Those are the people actually building the system. So in terms of the thinking about the product, they are the most important, right? But having that experience, even as a BA, if you can get close to understanding what developers do, how you communicate with them, how they receive any of your user stories or requirements, if wherever you are, if you're still doing functional specification, how they receive it, right, will be easier. You can get buy-in easier, right? You can get sign-offs easier because you know what they want. Okay, should we go to the next question, please?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, sorry, one more question for me. Yeah, I know I'm talking too much, but yeah, I'm quite interested.
Okay, I'll let you go on this, and then we'll move on to the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So between the two, developer and a business analyst, after everything, we're not just here for fun. We are looking forward to enlighten ourselves, change careers, put food on our table, make our family proud, and all that. So between the two, which one do you think, in terms of income, is more lucrative between the two, as a developer or as a business analyst? Thank you.
It's a very difficult question to answer. What I would say, if anybody has some view on that, they could, but it's very easy to go on Google, search some of those recruitment sites, LinkedIn would even do it, and others. read, and all of that, and you'll get those salaries, right? Because it depends. It depends the sector you're working in. It depends on your level of experience. It depends on which area you're working in. As a developer, there are certain skills. Python developers are so sought after nowadays, so they get paid quite a lot because they're more involved in machine learning AI programs. So it really depends. It's a really difficult question to say. But based on your circumstances and what you want to do in which area, I suggest you just go online and search one of those job boards. You'll see it there. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right.
We can continue.
Okay, let's just take one more from. Is there another person
that was
wanted
the
to
last
ask?
question.
Okay.
Chukwuemeka, you can put your hand down if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah. Thank you for such amazing. Hello, sir. Please, I want to ask a question. Hello.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thank you for such opportunity. My name is Maisie Brighton. I am a data analyst, a data scientist. I have a master's in data science and AI, but I have had this quite difficult time to break into the job market, getting a job, even after numerous attempts, preparation. So I don't know if there is a clue that or a step or a process that I need to follow in order to get a good job. That's just what I want to ask for this time. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give you really short answer, but I think the real answer is long-winded. Probably best you've got my contact from the slides, and we can talk through that. And it's one of the reasons why we're having this talk, because the fact that you studied as a data scientist doesn't mean that you can only get a job that is writing the algorithms and developing the machine learning, right? There is a whole lot of stuff that you need to do to prepare the data landscape. We look at some of the skill set here about understanding the data, describing the data, understanding, classifying the data, sourcing it, right? Making sure that
Yes,
it
sir.
moves from point A to B. You can still do a lot of those things. And when you look at those job profiles, they are not termed data scientists, right? They're probably data analysts. But when you go in there, you're working in that environment and you're close to the data scientist, and it could be just a path for you, right? Because to work as a data scientist is a really it's a really niche area at the moment, right? At the moment, I know it's going to change, but at the moment. So if it's something you're finding difficult, it's just to broaden your horizon a little bit. And that's why we're having this conversation today. One of the reasons. Yeah.
Okay, sir. I appreciate it.
So
can we leave some of those questions after the session?
Yeah, so I think just it is just going back here very quickly, right? So we talked about all this really good stuff that BAs do, really recognize within organizations and how they can articulate what the business wants and drive that change through some process changes or sometimes through IT build and development, right? A lot of this change involves the use of data. A lot of this change involves the movement of data, the creation of data, the management of data. And it's one of the reasons why we're saying BAs, and in fact, we'll look at a statement by Gardner that talks about data. Everyone needs to be conscious and start to get close to it. But before we do that, I just wanted to just bring this picture. I think this picture is from one of my formal professors, but it just shows the different kinds of data that exist today. So in the last, say, 10 years or so, it was mostly around tabular data. So tabular data is what you see on your Excel, right? You have columns and then you have rows. And that's how relational database management systems are built, right? Looking at data in that sense. Some of you may be aware of skills such as SQL, which is really for querying or interrogating your data. And it's all based on these rows and column. Underneath it is all based on set theory, right? So it's about subsetting for people that are mathematicians. And with the explosion of the internet, social media, Internet of Things, and also with the movement to cloud, the cheaper ways by which we can store our data these days, right? We've seen a really explosion of different forms of data, right? We start to see a lot more things from the satellite, sensors, images and log files, a lot more. And we start to see data now is really dense, sparse, and this is what people tend to refer to as big data, right? So kind of a buzzword that is used to refer to these kind of things. Tabular data tends to be really structured. So you have your headings like in your Excel, right? And then you know what's in there. You tend to understand if it's numeric or if it's some sort of alpha characters. And then the big data landscape tends to be all sorts. Right? This really tends to be, although it seems like really dry, but it tends to underpin some of the things that we do with data in organizations. So you will start to hear a lot more about data as a product, as a lot of organizations, as they pull a lot of this information within them and also from the internet and social media, they're all looking for ways to kind of monetize that data. So it's going even beyond sustainability and having their competitive edge. To be able to monetize is create data, what they call data products. Right? And to be able to do that, if you don't have good data management practices, you actually can't do it, right? You can't make use of that real volume and variety of data that you have. And I'm saying here, it's my view that BAs have really a huge role to play in being able to understand these things, in being able to articulate the real requirements, how businesses can monetize this, what kind of business case could be for such investment in this kind of data. All the traditional BA skills that we've looked at in the last set of slides applies here. It's just that the domain that you apply it to is just slightly different. So these are some of the areas that, as a typical business analyst, when you look at it and you're applying for a job and you look at these areas, you probably look away, right? If you were to just go on a job site and you're looking at things like, say, oh, there's a project on a data governance, you probably look away. Maybe I've not looked at anything around data governance. There's stuff around data analytics. You probably go away because you're thinking analytics is on the code, right? You're only building. You have to have skill set in R or in Python to build the code. So I'm here to really say there's a lot more that happens before you get to even writing the code. And even when you write the code, there's a lot of management of that code and that release. Still the things that BAs tend to do, right? The acceptance testing and all of that still happens even within these programs, right? So when you see those jobs and stuff, they're still very relevant to your skill set. Other kinds of projects that you'll find kinds of reporting. I know a few people, and even on this call, have been involved in kind of regulatory reporting projects or even business intelligence projects. Slightly different skill set that you tend to have, and we'll look at some of those skill sets in the next slide. This is not an exhaustive list, by the way, but these are some of the ones that I've worked in and some of the ones that I thought BAs can, with what they have, can really contribute in this projects. By the way, up here, I did find this research from Gartner that talks about data literacy. And it's really showing how valuable it is to be skilled, at least slightly in data, just to understand what it is. The quality of data quality has become a really huge thing, certainly within the finance and banking, where you get a lot of regulatory fines levied at banks and building societies. You get a lot of BAs involved in those, trying to articulate what are the quality criteria based on what dimensions of quality, how to understand the source of the problem, right? In data management speak, is really the lineage, right? Really going back to the source and trying to do some sort of impact analysis. Again, the soft skills that you learn as a BA applies here with a slightly more different focus, right? And this is the mindset shift that I think needs to happen. And maybe it's the right time to just stop here, because I think this is really important to then take stock, Rachel, and then probably just talk through some of the sessions that we're planning to have, maybe a taster session, which will really go into a little bit more details around these kinds of skill sets and projects that you could be involved in August, and then a full set of training and mentorship in coaching, and also help with job search and CVs and that kind of stuff to kick off in October. It's really going to be an encompassing a set of training for BAs and data analysts, right? So more to come. You've got all the contacts, you've got Rachel's number and stuff. So do reach out if you're interested in those sessions.
Thank you very, very much again. Wale, I see you had your hand up. I don't know whether or not you still want to ask your question, or do you want us to continue?
No, yeah, I had my hand up. Hi, everyone. Hi, Tajam. Thanks for the session. I wanted to ask, the slide where you had the different types of data, like tabular and so on, there was a one on there that was sensor. Could you give me an example of the sort of data that would be classified as a sensor?
So this is this is data where I'll give you one example that you tend to have these days, right? So if you look at your pipes that they get laid across the streets for water, right? These days they get all sensors in there, right? The reason is because if there are any issues, right, it helps them to pinpoint where that issue is. So that they read this sensor information, right? And then understand where to go and investigate.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I did not think of that, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes,
just one real case example.
Okay, we've got another hand up. Desmond.
Yeah, hi, thank you. If you want to go, can you please go to the next slide, please? After this one. Yeah.
This one?
Where you have no, not this one. After this. Yeah. So where you have these are all the data projects. So no, not this one.
The previous one?
Yes, please.
Hold on. That one.
Yeah. So are all these areas where a BA, a business analyst, can work in, especially data governance, and how does a BA, like someone who is a BA, how can it fit into, for example, data governance?
Okay, so let me explain. It's a good you asked this one because that's I run a data governance team, so I can just tell you now how BAs that work for me are actually involved in this program, right? So let me give you a bit of context. Probably a scenario will be better. So I do governance for a project where we're building a platform within the bank. So that platform, what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to have information for all the data that every business in that bank shares as a product. So for example, if a business application is sending data, business application A sends data to a business application B, then they need to provide that information, right? So the BAs that I have within my team, right, works with each of those different lines of business, different application teams to make sure that they document what they call metadata into the catalog, right? So this data catalog here, right? That's what they do. They look after the registration process, right? They talk to the various teams, understand any issues that they may have, any special requirements that they may have. So they feed the requirements back into the architects, right? Really playing a crucial role. They run meetings with all the different lines of business and share updates to the catalog, updates to the system, new functionalities that have come, how to onboard those different lines of all BA stuff, right? But within the data governance function.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So when we have the tester session later on, sometime in August, the data we will announce, we will go through details in some of these areas. Because I can acknowledge that within the data governance, it is very difficult sometimes to find the right skill set to employ, right? So it's a huge area in different companies actually setting up their governance functions, but it's really difficult to get the right skill set to work in there. It's hard to even find training. You can get things like the DMBOK, which are standard kind of training, but they take you the full set of trainings that will probably take you months and months to go through. And in the workplace, you probably don't need all of that. So long-winded answer, but it's only because it's an area that I'm passionate about. So we can talk about that in August at some point. Okay, so I'll just take you through, apologies. I'll take you through this slide. If we can, admin, if we can try and mute and where the noise is coming from.
Oh,
We good
Target,
now.
you're muted.
We're good.
Yeah, I think the presenter has muted himself. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All good
Okay.
now.
Yes.
I'm not even sure what was the last word that you heard.
Oh, you said you're going to move on to the
requested.
next slide.
Okay, so that's fine then. Right. So based on those different projects, I thought I'll kind of list out some of the skill sets that I think you need. Some of these I've actually worked through with some of my mentees in trying to bring out those. I think as a BA, these are really some good skill sets that you need to supplement with. Here is really what is data. It's kind of follow on to what I've been talking about there around tabular data and big data. It's really good to understand what data is, because understanding the structure of data has an impact into how you store it and how you query it. Tabular data tends to have some sort of structure in it, and is more suited to kind of data warehouse, business intelligence kind of things. Big data tends to have less structure. They call it semi-structure or no structure at all. And it's a different ways by which you store it and you query it. And that has a huge impact in terms of the different projects. And I'll come down, since we kind of directly related to that, it's really around SQL. I mean, how can you be working through some sort of process improvement, looking at a process that manages or creates or changes data, and you can't really be able to see that information in the database? It will be useful, right, to be able to query that database and see the data. So I think kind of the basics of SQL, you really need to know, right? And when you start to query the data and you look at it to say what shape or form it is, you need to be able to start to understand some of the the concepts within that data, the entities within that data, right? And this is where slight skills in trying to understand the concepts and how they relate to each other, right? So if I'm looking at some sort of student information, I may want to understand what course they have enrolled in, for example, if I'm looking at the university data. It's really nothing too detailed, it's high level. But guess what? That kind of understanding of the structure is what you need to even be able to go and do machine learning models, right? Even before you go and start doing all those kind of programming, you need a high level understanding of that data. When you start to look at on different programs, even on AI programs or process improvements or applications, it is the understanding that today systems are all interconnected and they all kind of talk to each other, right? When UIBA, you're involved in those kind of projects, you have to understand how data flows. But by the way, if I'm getting customer from system A and system B calls it client, is it really the same thing or is it different? How do I know if it's the same? Is the structure the same? So you need to start to understand the different data types. What's is this numeric? Is it alpha? What's the length of the string? And so on and so forth. And as you do that, is there a kind of valid list of values that you need to have for that? As you start to build that, guess what? You're already building a data dictionary. I mean, these are broad things that sometimes you hear and you think they are very, very complex, but they are not, right? And if you're within an organization where it's really, they want some sort of common landscape, common meaning, understanding of their data, they may decide to create what they call a data glossary. Glossary is really what you know about, kind of glossary in terms of a dictionary. Have a list of terms and you have defined them such that when I define a customer, I know what it is. It might seem simple, but when you get into a data project, to define customer is difficult. If you look at a Tesco customer, who is a Tesco customer? Is it somebody that walks into Tesco and has never bought anything? Is it somebody that bought something in Tesco in the last year? What is a customer? So it becomes tricky, and these are some of the things that you meet within data projects that you don't kind of see in other kinds of projects. When you start to, information starts to flow, when you look at even on process improvements, you're looking at the process and process changes, processes tend to be affected by applications, right? And by doing that, applications they send information from A to B, like we've talked about before on the data dictionary. Those applications may be built differently, right? They may be designed differently. So for me to send information from A to B, then I need to do some sort of data mapping. How do I map that information, right? Because those things are not exactly the same. So you need some sort of data mapping skills. It's not that complex, but it's a good tool that you can have in your arsenal, right? Again, still talking about data. Data needs to come from A to B, different sources. How do you source data and ensure that it's the right data you've sourced? And typically in organizations, data tend to move around, right? They tend to call it daisy chaining of data. But you want to make sure that you're going to the right source, the origination, so that it's less corrupted, right? The quality is good. How do you do that, right? Again, this is all around data sourcing. Few techniques that you need to do, certain principles that you need to be aware of, right? And with that, you're well equipped to be really engaged in those kind of in just kind of data projects. Again, something around the data life cycle. You need to be able to understand how data moves and how data evolves, right? I gave an example of a customer. Um, in that case, in some people, they may look at the customer and say there is a life cycle around it, because at the time that you're inquiring for a service, some businesses may look at you as a prospect rather than a customer. Right. So there may be kind of life cycle of data, and there are other examples that we can talk about. But those are some of the things that you need to be aware of within data projects. I have pinpoint one thing here around data protection and retention, because it tends to fall within data management programs. But this is where your GDPR kind of falls, right? So you have huge regulations from the EU that comes to say you need to be able to do protect your personal data. Now, how do you even know what a personal data is, right? Is it your name, date of birth? So you need to be able to define those things um, on that to be able to apply any of those kind of regulations. There will be also certain regulations that will say you need to be able to retain your data for a particular period of time, or you need to destroy it, right? We get all those, even within the UK here. These are all typical data management programs to really solve really important business issues. Um, Again, data classification, data segmentation, some people call it, kind of helps us to be able to, it's almost like a labeling of your data. If you go into some bank accounts these days, I don't know, the one that I really love to do this with is Monzo. If you have a Monzo, every time you do a transaction, you can pick which category you want that to fall into, right? That's all segmentation, data classification. And guess what? It's a similar kind of things that we're doing. It drives a lot of things. It helps you to be able to say for a certain system, this kind of data, hide it from a certain kinds of users. As a BA, you are articulating those kind of requirements and you're documenting them. But guess what? You're doing it within a data project. Typically, visualization, this is kind of bread and butter for BAs in terms of providing a view, a UI mockup, and those kind of things. But again, within the data program, you take that even further, right? To start build prototypes. You build things like on Tableau and tools like that. But guess what? Tools like Tableau, what do they use? Underneath is basic SQL. They are interrogating the data. They just don't show you upfront, right? So this is not an exhaustive list. There's a whole lot more. I've just picked a few that within my role, and the last one, they've been really integral in terms of what BAs can do and contribute to those data programs. Okay, so I think, Rachel, so we're getting into the last phase now, so we open it up for any questions.
Any questions, guys? Don't be shy. Your opportunity to talk. Oh, are we doing Miss Bronze? Okay. Any question, guys? Right.
Okay, so it's either everything I said was very well understood, or it was dry. It can be a dry subject, but it is an awareness session to really know that these things are there.
Okay. I'll say thank you very much for your time. guys.
Rachel, can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Uh, Sagem, it's been nice listening to you. I just want to ask, do you have like a template for a data dictionary, or how does one go about building one?
So you can go online, BMBOK, and maybe if you search a little bit, you'll find somebody who's put a template in there, right? So it depends. This kind of things really depends on requirements for an organization, right? It's not going to be a one size fits all. I can tell you that. But you tend to have typical things. So I would not keep a template for a data dictionary, but I can take an industry standard template, right, and provide you. So yes, the BM one I can provide you with that one.
A BM bug, you said.
Yes. Is it BM
Okay.
or DM I think it's
All
either
right.
BM or DM Yeah.
All right. I'll look it up. Thank you.
No, I think it's Data Management Book of Knowledge. I think DM Yeah.
It's a DM book, like you said.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up?
We have a hand up. Is that Raheem's hand?
Hi.
Hello.
Okay. So thank you, boss, for this for your session. It's actually very nice. And I just wanted to ask, cause and you mentioned that there will be a taster session sometimes in August for a data training in October. I don't know if you want to say a bit more about it.
Okay.
Okay.
There's gonna be some information coming through before August. So just watch out. If Mr. Tayan puts anything, I will share it in the group for all of you. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Did you want to know more about the taster session, the details, or did you just want to know about the dates?
I'm just trying to prepare so I don't miss anything.
Okay. Now I think
You
you'll
will
get the communication.
It's going to be on IT Tribe, so you know about it. Okay, Mohammed, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and good evening, and thanks to Mr. Tagnim for the wonderful session. So, still on the last question I was asked, and there are some of us that are on the call right now that we are not in the WhatsApp group. So, how do we get updated?
Okay. If you drop me a message, or Mr. Tagem's not email is there, you can see his email. If
Okay.
you can if you cannot send an email, send a WhatsApp message to that number on the flyer,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay.
I will update you.
All right. Noted.
Yeah, yes, we do. Another thing that we may do is to send out information to everyone who registered to attend the session.
Okay.
Because we have your details, we can send you an email.
Oh, all right. All right. I'll be
Yeah.
looking forward to the emails, and I'll forward a message. I'll drop a message on the WhatsApp, just like you said.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, the number is there, 0744
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Raheem, do you have your hand up? Or is that all
Yeah,
right?
yes, I did for a while. Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me?
We can hear you, Raheem.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Tagem. Thank you, Rachel, for the meeting. I just wanted to ask. You said you are specifically more passionate about data management. I think in the backend sector you mentioned. So I just wanted to know, like, what are the what are the skills you think most of the professionals, like BA professionals you've encountered in your team or industry large, what skills do you think is lacking right now that you think you would like to probably pass on those skills more to your mentees? And what are the skills you think are most important out of those ones?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So if we start with the typical BA skills, right? That's a given, right? That is really important. Because anything you do, you need to be able to do requirement analysis, run workshops, hold meetings, really write user stories and stuff, right? So that is standard. The additional thing that I was talking about when you're involved in data projects, and it depends on what the project is, right? That's why I listed some of the few projects. And that's one of the things that we will be looking to do during the mentorship program, right? Because if you are applying for a kind of a data related project, then we should be able to make sure that you have the right skills, right training, and it doesn't take too long, right? I'll say that it's more of an awareness of those kind of things, because a lot of people are not aware until they meet it, right? So if you're applying to go work in some sort of data or system integration kind of project where maybe in that project they're trying to replace one system with another, then there's going to be a lot of migration of data, right? And you need that skill set, what I just talked about around kind of data mapping and even data dictionary and understanding that, right? So I don't know if it's a kind of top 10 or the top one. I think it just depends on the project itself.
I was sorry. I was asking like specifically for your industry around fintech or financial services.
So financial services has a really complex architecture of different systems. A lot of banks have grown by taking up other smaller financial organizations. So they always go
Yes.
through some sort of consolidation of their systems to make sure that these different systems are not performing the same function. So what I just explained around system integrations, typical kind of projects happening within the banks, right? The other thing that is happening within the banks is a heavily regulated environment. So they're really subdued to regulatory pressures. They don't want to make mistakes because they get fined heavily. So regulatory reporting, regulations such as the GDPR and all those data classification skills, huge, right? Within banks at the moment.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any more questions?
All right, so I think we'll probably exhausted um, the questions, Rachel. But I think it's been a very interactive session, which is good. So thanks everyone for attending, and Rachel, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to share and collaborate in this way.
I want to
So I
thank you
will.
so much. I want to thank you so much, AT, for coming. Thank you for supporting our group. I know this is the second time you've made it. I'm not sure the members can remember, but I must say you are very, very instrumental to the group, because you've even mentored some other people who are in the group as well, and they've secured jobs as well. So thank you so much for your contribution, for your passion to the IT world.
Thank you.